But of course you could go on to fight. Of course he could have gone on being the prophet with the sword. But there are times when to make peace is more daring, more creative, and more enduring.
1 year after signing the Hudaybiyah Treaty, Muhammad led his followers on a new pilgrimage to Mecca. After years of rejection, persecution, and humiliation, this was truly a moment of triumph.
The first pilgrimage of the Muslims after Hudaybiyah must have been an extraordinary event for everybody, because the Meccans couldn't bear it. They decamped and went and sat up in the hills and mountains outside the city and watched this procession, huge procession of Muslims and some of their confederates coming on the Hajj and, as it were, taking possession of the city, crying out the pilgrim cry, "Here I am, O God, here I come," in a huge cry.
Then came the moment Muhammad had waited 7 long years to achieve.
Muhammad sends Bilal, an African ex-slave, this lowest of the low in the eyes of the Meccans, up onto the sacred shrine of the Kaaba, what the Meccans regard as their shrine, to deliver the call to prayer. And the hills around Mecca are granite. They're set up for a sonorous voice. And the call to prayer resonates through the valley.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله.
Bilal was proclaiming for all to hear, there is one God, and Muhammad is his prophet.
It must have been an appalling moment for the Meccans, but an extraordinary moment of exhilaration for the Muslims, performing all the rites punctiliously and then taking no advantage of this, going back peacefully home.
But the peace between the Muslims and the people of Mecca would not last. By the end of the year, the Meccans had broken the Treaty of Hudaybiyah by attacking a clan allied with Muhammad. In response, 10 days into the holy month of Ramadan, Muhammad and a Muslim army of 10,000 men set out to take Mecca by force.
The Prophet felt he was strong enough to be able to conquer Mecca. But as the army approached the city, more and more leaders of the Quraysh, they realized that they were not going to win, and so many decided to join Islam. The Prophet entered the city without resistance.
When he came into Mecca, he came in with his head bowed down. He did not come in as an arrogant, conquering warrior. He comes in humbled by a victory that he sees is from God.
After circling the Kaaba 7 times, Muhammad destroyed each of the 360 idols that surrounded it. He then turned to the vanquished Meccans who had sought refuge inside the shrine, his own brethren who had oppressed and attacked the Muslims for so many years.
He says, if you were in my position right now, what do you think you would do? And the Meccans are afraid they're about to die. And then he says, you are all pardoned. He grants them all amnesty. And this was unheard of in this culture, unheard of in this society, and very unexpected among the Meccans.
The religion that had begun in ridicule and persecution was now thriving throughout the Arabian Peninsula. But shortly after returning to Medina, Muhammad received a premonition of his death. He told his daughter, Fatima, that every year during Ramadan, the angel Gabriel recited the Quran to him and asked him to repeat it. This year, Gabriel had asked Muhammad to recite the Quran twice. "I cannot but think," Muhammad said, "that my time has come." In February 632, Muhammad made what would be his final pilgrimage to the city of his birth. On his first pilgrimage, he had led a few hundred Muslims back to Mecca. This time, tens of thousands of believers followed in his footsteps.
He arrives in Mecca as the leader of the Muslim people now, not as the enemy of the Meccans. And they begin to perform the rites of the pilgrimage. And during this period, Muhammad defines the rites of pilgrimage as they're performed today.
Michael Wolff has written extensively about the Hajj, the traditional pilgrimage which every Muslim is expected to perform at least once. 2 to 3 million Muslims from around the world travel to Mecca every year for this 5-day ritual, which takes them in the footsteps of Abraham, the ancient patriarch from whom Muslims, Jews, and Christians all trace their lineage. In 1990, Wolff, a convert to Islam, took part in his first Hajj.
The Hajj was one of the most attractive elements in Islam to me as a non-Muslim and then as a Muslim. When I finally became a Muslim after 20 or more years of thinking it over, the first thing I wanted to do was make the Hajj. When I circled the Kaaba for the first time, I was in a state of wonder. You're there with tens of thousands of people all doing the same thing at once. You're literally putting God at the center of your life for that period of time.
At the culmination of the Hajj, on the plain of Arafat, on a small hill called the Mount of Mercy, Muhammad gave his final sermon.
Here's a man who began his mission as this individual in Mecca, persecuted with almost no followers, and his life is completed with a valley filled with tens of thousands of people that have accepted his message, and there he is preaching to them his final sermon, and in it, in a sense, is a summation of this universal teaching.
He tells them to be good to each other and not to violate each other's rights, for men and women to treat each other humanely, for brothers and sisters to treat each other well, and for Muslims to treat each other as brothers and sisters. And perhaps most importantly, he calls an end to revenge, to blood killing, to the vendetta, which has bled this culture terribly since he was born. At the end of Muhammad's sermon, he does not list his achievements. This man has unified people. He has taught them monotheism. He has brought them to peace. And yet he doesn't mark these as his accomplishments. Quite the opposite. He asks his community, have I fulfilled my mission to my God and to you? You can hear in his words the desire for a completed mission. This is a man of faith.